Copyright Law by Rosalyn Martinez. The Copyright Act of 1976 is a United States legislative statute that protects the rights of copyright holders. It was enacted on October 19, 1976 and has been in effect since January 1, 1978. Copyright protection goes into immediate effect once a literary piece of work has been created in some sort of tangible form. The duration of copyright protection can last for up to 70 years after an author's death and for 95 to 120 years for anonymous or pseudonymous works. There are many sections to the Copyright Act of 1976. Here are a few. First Sale Doctrine, Registration and Notification of Copyright, Public Domain, Penalties and Copyright Infringement, International Copyright, Fair Use, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and the Teach Act. The first sale is Section 109 of the Copyright Act. Per information provided in the Campus Guide to Copyright Compliance, first sale allows for the lending, reselling, and disposing of copyrighted items. Registration and notification of copyright. People often misunderstand and are under the impression that the author must register their work. There was a time in which copyright notice was required, but that was eliminated when the U.S. adhered to the Berne Convention, effective March 1, 1989. Notice is no longer required, but still recommended. Copyright notice should contain the copyright symbol, the year the work was created, and the author's name. You can see an example here. Public domain. This consists of all works that have never been or are no longer protected under copyright. It consists of 4 categories. First, generic information, then works in which copyright holders failed to renew a registration. Third, works published in 1989 that failed to include proper notice of copyright. And last, works created by the U.S. federal government. Under penalties and copyright infringement, it is stated that by violating or infringing on an author's rights, he or she may be able to sue for compensation. Damages can range from $250,000 to $150,000 plus attorney's fees. You may also be criminally liable for pieces of work valued at more than $1,000. If the value is more than $2,500, you may be sentenced to 5 years in jail plus fines. International copyright. There is no such thing. However, the Berne Convention states that once a work is protected in one of the convention member countries, it is protected by copyright in all of them. As of mid-2004, 156 countries, including the U.S., belong to the Berne Convention. Fair use. This is under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. Fair use provides 4 factors to help individuals determine if their use of copyrighted content can be used without obtaining copyright permission. In order for content to be considered fair use, you must ask yourself if the use is for criticism, comment, news reporting, education, scholarship, or research. If so, then you proceed to the 4 factors listed under fair use. Otherwise, you must obtain copyright permission. Digital Millennium Copyright Act is fairly new and was passed into law in 1998 to address some of the issues unique to digital copyright. Under DMCA requirements, university networks acting as internet service providers have limited liability. The Teach Act. The Teach Act applies to distance education on or off campus. Under Teach, instructors may use a wider range of works in distance learning environments. Students may participate in distance learning sessions from virtually any location, and all participants can enjoy greater latitude when it comes to storing, copying, and digitizing materials. Here you will find some information regarding copyright law.
As a student, You must always be aware of and follow copyright law. This video will teach you a little bit about copyright law and how it will affect you as a student and as a creative individual. Copyright law addresses the question of who has the right to copy or sell something. The answer should be simple. It's the person who originally made it, right? Any questions? Okay, maybe this is a bit complicated. Let's go back in time to where it all started. Here we are in Washington, D.C. It's 1790 and Congress is about to pass the first Copyright Act. At the time, the Copyright Act gave protections for authors, writers, and creators to have their work protected by the government so no one else could steal their work and call it their own. Now let's take a look at what copyright law protects. Copyright law protects all written work. In other words, books, magazines, newspapers, websites, any information written is protected by copyright law. Images are also protected by copyright law, which includes photography, pictures, illustrations, and any work of art. All audio creations are also protected, which includes music and all vocal recordings. Motion pictures are also covered, which includes movies and videos. Copyright law also covers dance, choreography, architecture and architectural designs, and theatrical productions, also known as plays. So what does this really mean for you? Well, the point is that you can't go around taking whatever you want, even if it is for school. In some cases, it actually can be against the law. But wait, there is another law that was created to help students and teachers like you and I. That law is called fair use. Fair use law allows students and teachers to use certain amounts of copywritten material in our work. We are allowed to use a certain amount of written work, and that is up to 10% of the original work and no more than 1,000 words, whichever is less. For movies and video, we are allowed to use up to 10% of the original work, no more than 3 minutes, whichever is less. Music and lyrics are also allowed up to 10% of the original work and no more than 30 seconds, whichever is less. And finally, pictures and photographs. We can use up to 5 images from one given artist or photographer. You might be starting to worry that everything out there is covered by copyright law. Well, the framers of the Constitution were concerned about the overuse of copyright. They put in place specific guidelines to make sure that certain information could not be owned by one individual. This is known as public domain. Things that fall under public domain include ideas, words, facts, phrases, things with expired copyright, and anything created by the government. I hope that this video has helped you to understand a little bit more about copyright law, fair use, and public domain. Good luck with your future studies, research, and creations. This has been a Tara Miller production.
I hope this presentation has been helpful. Thank you for your time.